Employers of Reddit. What is the most inappropriate piece of clothing someone has worn to a job interview? I've never had to deal with inappropriate clothing at an interview before, but, and probably worse, I did have to try to explain away to elected officials and citizens at a public consultation meeting why the engineering consultant we contracted out for a portion of developing that town's strategic plan showed up in a fricking Hawaiian shirt and flip-flops. Reason I gave: he wanted to stand out and field as many questions as possible by sticking out like a sore thumb and seeming approachable. Real reason: this was his last gig before retirement, so he had zero fricks, and he had just signed his divorce papers that morning and spent the afternoon drinking at the hotel bar with his lawyer. Unfucking real. Nothing in his contract dictated anything about attire, since 99% of what he was paid to do was going to be done from his winter place in Arizona, only that he would be expected to show up at any public consultations. You better fricking believe our standard contracts going forward included a clause on it. Frick, he's an engineering consultant. They hit a certain age level of experience and you best believe they can do as they wish. Now how most of them wish is maybe wear jeans a tad more often and work from home one day a week. But boy, there's really nothing you can say to an engineer who has so much experience they can design your facility backwards with their eyes closed. A see-through shirt. I could make out the details of her bra. Right after that, a candidate came in with one eye in bright green shadow, liner, and mascara. The other eye was completely free of makeup. Poor attention to detail. That was weird day. Haha, I was so nervous for my thesis defense I almost went in with only one eye with mascara on. I looked like one eye was way wider than the other, haha. Thankfully I noticed just in time, but this one resonated with me, haha. I actually got a job by showing up scruffy. At the time I'd been working construction trying to get back into office work. Saw a now hiring side and just wandered in and asked for an application. The person who handed me the application was nice and polite to my face. Then told another coworker that guy has no chance showing up like that. The other coworker was my cousin, who informed the HR manager, who called me to apologize and invited me for an interview. I didn't even know what had transpired until my cousin told me later, but I said, oh no worries, I was just passing through and obviously I'll be appropriately dressed if you hire me, haha. Made sure I was properly cleaned up and dressed appropriately for the interview. Got the job and ended up working there for 5 years. Had they not made some stupid remark, I may not have even been considered. I had an interviewee for an entry-level customer service position at a large company. Showed to our interview 15 minutes late in Hello Kitty pajama bottoms, a matching backpack, a bright pink hoodie, and warm and fuzzy slippers. I didn't even bother with the interview as she was late, but that has to be one of the most unprofessional attire I've seen in my hiring experience. The other I recall was a young woman interviewing for a customer service position at the airline I was at in an extremely low-cut blouse and short skirt, all in black. Mentioned something during the interview about how she hasn't smoked weed in a couple weeks and wanted to make sure we knew she wasn't high. An extremely short dress, but I ended up hiring her because she had experience. Turned out she was pregnant, coming from school, and her husband had met her at the interview site so she could change clothes, and that is what he had brought. She was so embarrassed, but did not have time to go home and change into something else. She ended up being the best worker I had ever hired. Don't judge a book by its cover. So many of the stories on here. They had a really amazing interview. Seemed perfect for the job. They didn't get it. Me. Back in ancient times when you still got an application, I walked into a Dillard's wearing jeans and a t-shirt, went to customer service and asked for an application. An older, extremely well-dressed lady was there and she asked me if I owned a suit. I said, if you hire me I will get one. She said, go back to men's and get fitted. She was the area sales manager for women's shoes at the time, and as far as I know still, Dillard's had a policy that women's shoes would have an attractive young man in a suit. Apparently I qualified as attractive. Her previous token had just been transferred to a much larger store because he was so good at his job. Our store was kinda the minor leagues and she needed to get a new live body male that day. The next not gargoyle who walked in was getting hired. I walked in and was not a gargoyle. Last thing she told me was never come in this store in jeans again, not even on your day off. We were one step away from Disney in maintaining the fantasy. Not an employer, but I recently watched this train wreck happen. My boyfriend's second job just hired several new people. BF and I were hanging out at his place of work after his shift was over, and we had the pleasure of witnessing an interview. Please note that this is a pretty casual place. All of the workers there wear jeans and gym shoes or boots to work. Their uniform is a t-shirt with the company logo, although sometimes the workers come in wearing a different, occasionally nicer, tops depending on if there's an event there or something. Interviewee shows up wearing the tiniest, tightest, sparkliest party dress I've ever seen in my life. It barely covered her nipples. Her entire braless back was exposed, and when she sat down on the chair for her interview, her whole bare butt hit the chair because the dress could not physically stay over her bottom while sitting. She was also wearing 6-inch heels. No offense meant towards prostitutes, truly, seeing as how my best friend was one for a bit, but she honest to God looked like she had just walked in from the street corner. The only place that outfit would have been appropriate was in a bedroom. Really, I cannot stress enough just how little clothing this lady was wearing. It was truly one of those situations where you knew you weren't supposed to stare, but you just couldn't look away. There were customers there at the time as well, and nearly all of them were staring at her in shock, the exception being a couple of men who were there with their wives. Those men were staring straight forward, wide-eyed, not daring to move their heads an inch, lest their wives think they were looking like. It was a spectacle. Anyway, so the next day, BF finds out they hired her. Apparently the skeevy old owner of the place liked her resume after all. Hopefully she remembers to wear pants, or at least underwear, when she starts. She was also wearing 6-inch heels. No offense meant towards prostitutes. Around here, the streetwalkers wear normalish clothes and maybe 3-4 inches pumps. You can tell they're working because of the heels and the eye contact. I worked in a phone shop, salesman, and we had an open day hiring event where anyone could walk in and be interviewed. We were always desperate for stuff because the turnover was insane. Due to the job being sold as a dream and being more of a nightmare, most people showing up were in a smart casual, what you would expect for an interview, but one guy had some real BDE. From bottom to top it went. Ripped jeans, Che Guevara top, 2 sweatbands on his wrists, and the creme de la creme, a snapback cap with the phrase "frick what you think" printed on it. What possessed this guy to think it was a good idea to wear a hat that literally calls out the interviewer's opinion of them? I will never really know. All I do know though, is out of the 50 or so odd interviewees, this guy was miles above the rest in terms of how well he interviewed. As you'd imagine, he didn't get offered the job for purely his clothing, proving that you should always at least make an effort, and don't wear a hat cussing the interviewer. What possessed this guy to think it was a good idea to wear a hat that literally calls out the interviewer's opinion of them? I will never really know, because, frick what you think. Not an employer, but my current workplace hosted a small job fair. This lady came in wearing a transparent shirt with no bra. My boss, who was a lady at the time, immediately turned the lady around and pushed her out the front door. A guy comes in later that same day wearing skin-tight short shorts and a very large blue tank top. Guy was nice and respectful during his interview. Boss told him she would have hired him on the spot if he had only put on something casual or professional. I have a story. I work at a hotel. One day a young lady came in asking about a housekeeping job. Our executive housekeeper was still there, so I called her office, let her know she had a potential applicant. She said she had a moment. She'd be right over. She came out, took one quick glance at her and told her we're not hiring. The lady left. The executive housekeeper then told me not to send anyone looking like that to her. I asked why. She said, "Did you look at her? The young lady was wearing very tight jeans with holes in them, and it was obvious that she wasn't wearing any underwear since half her rear end was showing. She had on what looked like stripper heels, and was wearing a halter top so tight it left nothing to the imagination." I was waiting for my interview at a vet clinic, vet tech nurse at the time, and the girl ahead of me was wearing Daisy Duke shorts, sunglasses, a very small tank top, and flip-flops. This was in summer in Southern California, but still, according to the hiring manager, who told me the story later, she never once removed the sunglasses and she did not get the job. I was wearing nice pants and a blouse and closed-toe shoes and had scrubs in the car in case they wanted a working interview as well. I remember we had a group interview for my job. Hate those frick companies that put you through that, and one of the guys was wearing a swimsuit and a really tight swim shirt. He said he was at a pool party and didn't have time to go home and change. He legit said, hey, I'm not about to give up going out and having fun with friends, because it's a social norm to dress up for job interviews. He didn't get the job. Afterthought, he was adamant about how he can still be serious and professional while wearing a swimsuit, and I kinda want to give him credit for the bold move. It probably would have worked on me, lol. For a design engineer position, this shows up in a near see-through purple sleeveless midriff shirt, leopard print bra that could be clearly seen through the shirt, white spandex type pants that you could also clearly see, a matching leopard print panties, and sandals. HR did their thing and passed her on to me to do the skills assessment test, 6 math, 6 logic questions, and then a CAD drawing that she was to reproduce in Solid Edge. Her CV shows 4 years experience. I gave her 1 hour to do the stuff. Got distracted and gave her almost an hour and a half. Returned her to HR and checked what she had done. Frick me, really, this woman got 0 of the questions right and had a few lines drawn, but that was it. Not even a finished sketch to do a protrusion. So fail across the board. I see the HR person walk the woman out and comes to my office. On her way back to her office, she said something like not sure what she thought she was applying for, but it sure isn't prostitution. Did she do well on the tests? At least nope, 0%. This woman's CV showed a BS in mechanical engineering and 8 years experience as a design engineer in the OG industry. Well, it was a BS alright. I was the one going to the job interview. When I was 16, I applied for a job at a well-known auto parts garage. I thought we were meant to be in a full formal clothing, for example a suit, so I wore a full 3-piece suit to the interview. When I got to the interview, all the other candidates were wearing boiler suits along with work boots. When it was my turn to go in for the interviewer was surprised, as I guess from his reaction. Apparently all candidates were sent an email telling them to wear protective clothing and something which they would not mind getting dirty, because we were meant to demonstrate the basic duties we would do whilst working at the garage, for example changing the oil in a car, etc. Well, I did no demonstrating that day, but the interviewer did agree to let me come in the next day to do some demonstrations. I got the job and worked there for about 2 years. I honestly miss that job, but I had to move for personal reasons. I'm a receptionist at a law firm, and back in the winter we were hiring for a new legal assistant. We had this lady come in through a hiring company, and she straight up told the hiring company and us that she wasn't going to dress professionally because she feels we shouldn't judge her on her looks or how she dresses for an interview. She literally came in wearing a ratty pair of sweatpants and a bleached stained sweater, and honestly she had this sense of entitlement that came off as rude when I greeted her. Needless to say, she didn't get the job. On the flip side, I kind of interviewed in a Canadian tuxedo because I was off of work and getting lunch with a friend when the friend got a call to help with something and sent me instead, since we were in the same line of work and he was working and couldn't sneak out. Turned out the help that was needed was a replacement for a consultant they didn't like, and they wanted someone to offer a second opinion. Apparently my opinion was good enough for them to offer me a full-time job on the spot. So not NSW inappropriate, but I was definitely underdressed compared to the room full of suits. If you are requested, especially immediately, I don't see how they could hold what you're wearing against you, within reason. LOL. So I had a test shoot, which is like an interview for models. We were supposed to be painting on swimwear. The model showed up with jeans and a hoodie and a hat, and refused to take any of them off for the shoot. She had no idea that she might have to disrobe, despite the fact that she applied for the position of body paint model and was told that the photo test would involve a painted on swimsuit. The point? No matter what job you are after, consider the requirements. At my last job, my agent liked if the whole office would interview candidates to help with team dynamic. We had a lady from a small bumfrick town send a resume and call multiple times till my agent set an interview as she was looking to move to our city. Agent takes this for tenacity and not addiction and invites her in. The lady is a 50-something head who was fortunate to lose her back teeth. She was tweaking during the interview, and when I spoke with her she wouldn't sit still in her chair. Not only that, but she badmouthed her current employer the entire time. Not a good look on a candidate. And she was wearing a velvet leopard print mini dress with ripped black stockings. She didn't get the job. I interviewed a candidate about a year ago who showed up in the standard suit, tie and Stormtrooper helmet. We asked the obvious question and he said he knew we were interviewing a number of candidates and statistically he knew his chances of getting the job were slim, so he figured he'd at least be memorable. He actually interviewed really well. It helped that I and the other manager are pretty big Star Wars fans and he really knew his stuff. He didn't get the job but we sure as heck remembered him, and about 2 months later we had an opening that he would have been a good fit for. If he'd interviewed for it he probably would have gotten it, but he'd already found a new role with a competitor. I was one of these but not by choice. I had an interview set for the 3rd of January at 3 PM. Well, the night of the 2nd of January, I spilled boiling water in my lap and was admitted to the burn unit in one of the local hospitals. The morning of the 3rd of January, I called the guy that was to interview me and explained why I had to miss the interview. Turned out, his office was literally across the street from the hospital I was at. He left work a little early and came to give me an interview while I was lying there in a hospital gown, heavily medicated. You get the idea. I did get the job after spending 7 weeks in the hospital and a couple weeks of home nursing care. That guy was one of the best bosses I've ever had. Jim, if you're out there and you see this, you'll always have my gratitude and respect. I was on the other end, I guess. I always presumed that you were to dress your best when it came to interviews. So when I went to a large group interview for the local amusement park as a teen, I wore my go-to interview outfit, a casual dress, a cardigan sweater, sensible flats. I walk inside and there was just a mass of teens wearing sweatpants, yoga pants, sweatshirts, short shorts, spaghetti strap tank tops, and so forth. I was so out of place and the other teens were making fun of me. A boy tried to flip up my dress. I left crying because when it came to narrowing it down on who to hire, I was told I was unqualified. The interviewer said, quite loudly, to the next girl that I was too fat and prudish to work at an amusement park. I weighed 160 pounds and my dress went to my knees. I hardly thought it was prudish. Looking back, I was crying over it. I guess I was just really sensitive. That guy was in butthole. Luxury retail here. Just last week a guy showed up in dingy jeans, flannel with his t-shirt hanging out the bottom, and ratty sneakers. He also took his phone out and put it on the desk next to him when he sat down. Interviewed him anyway, went over the details of the position and asked if he had any questions for me. Here's one friggin' question: can we wear street clothes or would I have to dress up? Not necessarily inappropriate on its own, but definitely for the environment. I had someone come in to fill out an application wearing jeans and a white tank top undershirt. His tattoos looked like prison tattoos. It was for a janitorial position, so that wouldn't necessarily take him out of the running. But then he told me about how he needs the job because his baby mama was pregnant. Overall, just seemed to not understand he was supposed to be being professional. Before he left, he shook my hand, "Since I'll be working with you soon." They hired him, and then quickly fired him when he was making lewd comments to the female staff. I was working retail at a clothing store. Dude is driving a super loud motorcycle, pulls up onto the sidewalk and parks directly in front of the entrance, essentially blocking both doors. He strolls inside without taking his helmet off, walks right up to the counter and pulls a crudely rolled up application out of his jacket and hands it to me, still rolled up. "Please take off your full face motorcycle helmet before trying to apply for a job. You have no idea how cool he thought he was." I interviewed a kid, barely 18, for a attire tech support position. While this is an over-the-phone support for a software company, he decided to come into the interview in baggy shorts, flip-flops, a white wife beater and a flat-brimmed seedless hat. He didn't make it out of the lobby. Back when I managed a hotel, I was interviewing this girl for a front desk position. She's probably 20. I was 24 at the time. She was put together well and the 15-minute interview went well. She was personable and seemed to have her head on straight. Interview was wrapping up and I was about to offer her the job when she says she really needs the job and would blow me if I gave it to her. I declined and told her we'd be in touch in a few days. I didn't hire her, but I'm sure she didn't have a hard time finding employment elsewhere. 2 sizes too small, skin tight plastic looking leggings that were bright pink. Strapless crop top exposing her bare belly and barely covering her boobs. She wasn't wearing a bra and I saw a bit of nip. She was also wearing these extremely high heels that looked like sneakers. It was bizarre. The job she was interviewing for was a receptionist for a nice office. I ran small companies for years, so I have interviewed hundreds of people. Some definitely left an impression. I spoke to a lady over the phone for a position as a purchasing agent, so I asked her to come in for an interview. She said she was passing through near our somewhat remote office on her way home from a beach weekend, but she was not dressed appropriately for an interview. I told her our standards were relaxed and she should stop in anyway. She wasn't kidding. She had a super dark wiffle beater on with no bra, tight hot pants, a tad of a flower which was really a pea, on her arm. I hired her. She was the best hire I ever made, incredibly good at her job. Another woman came in for a clerical position in a sheer sundress, sat in a way that it was apparent she had no underwear on, then told me repeatedly how she would do anything to get the job. No thanks. Guy came in wearing a t-shirt adorned with marijuana leaves. The job was subject to federally mandated random drug tests. Due to EOC laws I had to process him and he had to take a pre-employment drug test. He called me the next day to ask if he passed his drug test. If you have to ask, the answer is no. Not an interview, but a first day. Factory job. This morbidly obese woman shows up to the wrong plant. She's wearing giant parachute pants and a t-shirt that is too small, so her naked, massive gut is literally hanging out from under the shirt, visible in its glory to the poor HR woman tasked with dealing with this. She also looked like she hadn't showered in weeks. I work at a car dealership and the position was for a delivery driver, so casual attire would suffice. Guy came in with torn up acid washed jeans, a t-shirt and was an hour late. Needless to say he didn't get the job. Not a job interview but college entrance exams. The professors told us about a guy who showed up in a fishnet wife beater. He looked like he just ran away from a Right Said Fred video. Was interviewer for a receptionist position at an executive office. Girl presented well on paper and thought she would be our top runner. She was from out of town, and when I contacted her she happened to be in town for a summer visit, so came in for an interview. She showed up in an outfit that could only be considered suitable for a nightclub, with an open back dress, including glitter sparkle eyeshadow, fake lashes and fake nails. I considered that she could have not packed to be prepared for a job interview, but the excess nightclub makeup was poor taste. This one was me. Just moved across the country and needed a job. Had spent the last 4 years as a cook and had a pretty good letter of recommendation from my old boss. Applied at a handful of kitchen work and got 2 callbacks the same day, both wanting to set up interviews for the following day. Next day I realized I hadn't really packed anything too professional, mainly just shorts, shirts and tank tops. I moved from Tasmania to Darwin. Thought, frick it, and ended up wearing track pants and a shirt as well as Converse to the interviews. I ended up being offered both jobs. I always found the women coming in with very tight tops, showing a lot of cleavage entertaining. Bonus points for having parts of the bra visible when sitting upright, and having it stand out in color, like black top, pink bra. I have no idea if that works somewhere. For us it was just a did you see X almost flash at E to impress us kind of laugh when reviewing the candidates. We still were hiring based on competence. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.